The UWACAM app transforms your smartphone into a powerful underwater camera that is capable of capturing high-quality underwater imagery, whether that is photos or videos. In a recent first tutorial, we looked at the convenient auto mode and covered all of the basic functions of UWACAM. In today's video, we'll explore the functions available within the Pro mode, offering numerous manual controls for maximum creative freedom and pro-level tools to help you capture the shot you really want. Right after the intro. Welcome back to the second part of this full-on tutorial about the UWACAM camera app. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, I suggest you stop this video here and watch part 1 first. It will give you a very good basic understanding of how the UWACAM app works and how it's structured. Some of the general workings of the app are covered in the first part, and we will build on these when going through the Pro mode in today's video. Like in part 1, everything in this video is based on UWACAM version 2.2, which is the current version at the time of publication of this second tutorial part. For any significant changes and feature add-ons in the future, I will produce follow-up tutorials from time to time, and they will be published here on my channel. So if you don't want to miss any of the follow-up videos, I suggest you subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet and activate notifications. Should there already exist any follow-up tutorials at the time of you watching this video, they will be linked in the video description below. Before diving into the Pro features, I would like to thank the UWACAM team for sponsoring this tutorial video. They asked me to make this video series to help UWACAM users get the most out of the app. And for those of you who don't have an UWACAM subscription yet, they are offering an introductory deal of 10% off on your first year of UWACAM. Just use the code UWA10, that's UWA10, right inside the app when signing up for your yearly subscription, and the discount will be applied automatically. The link to download UWACAM will be in the video description below. Thank you very much UWACAM for this generous offer. And now let's get into the Pro mode. Once we open the app for the first time, it will ask you whether you want to use it in Auto or Pro mode. If you've selected Auto back then, you now need to change that to the Pro mode. Tap the menu button, tap Show Settings, press on the first rectangle on the upper left and confirm that you want to switch to Pro mode. And voila, you've entered Pro mode. At first glance, the recording screen doesn't look much different to when in Auto mode, with the exception of the expanded information bar at the bottom, including information like focus distance, shutter speed, color temperature, exposure compensation, and ISO. You'll also see the 2 audio channels along the right-hand side of the screen. We will be diving straight into the menu as we have covered the functions of the other buttons on screen in the Auto mode tutorial already, and they still work the exact same way. Pressing the menu button, which has a different symbol here but is located at the same place, will get into the Pro Quick Access menu with its numerous shortcuts. You can access each of these functions by simply tapping on it. We'll go through what each symbol means in a moment, but should you forget at any time in the future, you can simply click on the information symbol in the bottom left corner and you'll find a quick explanation to each of them. If the function is active, it will have an orange circle around the symbol and will appear on the main recording screen on the bottom right. This is true for all functions, but a few exceptions we'll get to in a bit. The first function from the left is our settings menu. This is where you set up UWACAM to your likings and dial in all the different settings. We'll look at this a little later. The next one to the right is your exposure compensation. Activating that, you'll find it per default and when holding your phone in landscape mode on the bottom right part of your main recording screen, together with a plus and minus symbol. Using these buttons, you can easily and precisely adjust the exposure. As soon as you start using one of these buttons, the respective value gets locked. And you can unlock reset it by pressing on that function button, in this case the EV button. This is the same principle for most of the functions within the quick access menu. So going back into the quick access and tapping on the next symbol, the shutter speed. This one gets placed on the main recording screen and the previous one disappears. It's still active and in the same setting as you had it last, but simply not visible on the main screen anymore. At any time, you can always only have one quick access function displayed on the main recording screen. Your extended information bar tells you which settings are locked at any time by giving them a blue background, and settings which have been overridden because they are currently unavailable get a red background. If you have several functions locked and want to unlock them, simply enter the quick access menu and long press on them there to unlock them without having to bring each and every one of them to the main screen first. So we have covered the first two functions, the exposure compensation and the shutter speed already. Let's move on to the next one, which is your ISO. Pressing that, obviously, again, it's gonna come down into the main recording screen and we can adjust that by pressing either of the plus or minus symbols there. Going back into the menu, the next one, the little mountains, the two of them, that's your manual focus. Having that activated, you can now change the focus point further away from the lens or bring it closer to the lens with plus and minus. Now, as soon as you start moving the focus point, it will get locked. If you want to unlock it again and go back to the autofocus, just tap on it and it's gonna go back to auto. Let's unlock the ISO. Next to the right is our frames per second. We can just change these by pressing plus and minus. So it's a really easy way of quickly adjusting and changing your frames per second. You don't have to go and dive deep into the menu. You can do it quickly with that function there. Then on the next one, which is the first one on the second row to the left, to the very left, that's your gray card. And this is your function to do a manual white balancing. Now what you need is a gray card, like this one here from Kelden. You can just hold it in front of your lens and then press that gray card function. You'll see that the color temperature, the two functions right next to it to the right, the color temperature as well as the tint are now locked. They're blue, and if we go into the main recording screen, you can see that they're now locked, and they will stay locked until I deactivate that. If I want to do that, I can just go to the color temperature. Now I've got that selected and I can change that in small increments to fine tune it. The same goes with the tint. I can change the tint if I think it's not working with the automated setting. They are connected to one another. So color temperature and tint, if you change one, the other one will also get locked at the same time. To unlock them, long press on it, both will get unlocked again and you are back in auto mode. The same goes obviously if you change it here and now you want to go back to auto white balance, just tap on it and it's gonna change again to the auto functionality. Then we have here our zebra function. This is a function that helps you to determine whether or not your image is, the highlights are blown out in your image. That can be quite useful sometimes when shooting up to the surface and you don't want to blow out the reflection of the sun or the sun shining through the water. You can see here on my Nautilus, the little lines across the white parts of the Nautilus indicate that it's not blown out, but it's getting close to that section. And the threshold is set to 75%. You can change that with with adjusting it here. The higher I set the threshold, the brighter the parts have to be for the zebras to kick in. If I bring that threshold down, let's say to, I don't know, I can't bring it further down than 75, that's the lowest, but if I bring it down there, you can see it's already activated. If I bring them up all the way to 100%, you can see that no zebras are visible there yet. So you see how this works. So going on to the next one, this is our peaking, and that one is used well together with the manual focus. So the peaking actually shows you which part of the image is in focus with these lines. The appearance can be changed, we'll look at that a little later, but if I change my focal point here, then you see that the peaking goes away, and if I go back to my original focal point, the peaking will come back. So this is specifically useful when you're using manual focus, so that you can actually, you have a visual reference as to whether or not your image is in focus. So we can deactivate all these, that one as well, and we'll go to our compass overlay. And the compass overlay can also be adjusted in the way it is visible on screen. Now it's red, it's not very well visible. You can change all that. You can change the width of the lines, the appearance, the color, all that stuff can be changed. It's a useful tool that you can activate quickly there and then deactivate it again. We have our LUT previews. These can be set in the settings menu that we'll go into a little later, and then you can basically, if you shoot in a log format for example, you can use a conversion LUT to actually show you on screen what your final image will look like. A useful piece of technology that you can use there. And deactivate that again. We've got our playback button. That's the exact same thing as we have already discussed in the auto mode tutorial, so I'm not really gonna go too much into detail here. You can do all the different stuff here. You can cycle through all your recordings there. You can look at your location, the GPS location that was captured if that was enabled. You can watch your recordings there, go through your clips that you've taken. You can go into a list view where you can see all the clips that you have inside UWACAM. You can either select a single one, or you can do like batch selection and then do different stuff with that. You can export it somewhere, you can delete them, you can apply UVA color to several clips at the same time. All that sort of stuff can be done here. You also have the option of doing the fish identification, the visualizer AI function that can be done here. We'll talk about that a little later as well. And that's kind of what you can do inside the playback mode, which is also accessible right from the main screen down here. Then we have our zoom function, or our zoom buttons. If you bring that on, you can then just seamlessly zoom in and out. The letter that is, and it's, as you can see, it will actually jump in between the different lenses. So if you reach the end of one lens, it will just jump to the next one and keep zooming that way. Now, if you do want to change the speed of zooming, that's what happens in here. And if you just press on that button, it toggles through S, M, and F. F stands for fast, S for slow, and M for medium, and that's the speed in which the zooming will happen. Let's deactivate that again. We have a self timer here, so we can do 7 seconds, 30 seconds. That can be adjusted as well as to how many seconds that timer will take. The next function to the right is our camera blending, and if we activate that, now what is going to happen is that the iPhone is going to decide by itself when to change from one lens to another depending on the situation. So for example, if you get too close to an object using your one-time lens and you get out of the minimal focusing distance, your camera cannot focus anymore, it will automatically change to a lens that makes it possible for the phone to still focus and give you a proper looking image. It will usually combine different lenses together, so the results, the quality of the results is not always great, and that's why I try to avoid using the camera blending mode, so I usually prefer to have that turned off. Now you also have a orientation lock, which depending on how you're using your smartphone underwater and whether or not you're shooting just in one orientation or you're switching between vertical and horizontal, that can make sense to have that locked or not. On the bottom you have an information button giving you some information about the quick access menu and your inbox, where you'll receive important messages about updates and stuff from UWACAM. You can put UWACAM to sleep by pressing the moon icon, which helps conserve phone battery and prevents your phone from getting too hot. UWACAM recommends to put your camera to sleep before entering the water, during descending and ascending, and when swimming in between subjects. Pressing the cross button will exit the quick access menu. Next, let's go to the settings menu and see how you can configure UWACAM in greater detail. Enter the quick access menu and tap on the settings gear symbol. The settings menu looks exactly the same as the one we discussed in the auto mode tutorial, but including more submenus and features. Most obvious, you can now see 5 submenus at the top compared to the 3 available in auto mode. In addition to camera, settings and info, you also get playback and presets. Let's go through all these submenus and the underlying features step by step. The eye icon is the integrated help function describing all the features accessible in each of the submenus. So let's start with the camera menu, and the very first rectangle to the left, we've already covered that. That's your switch in between Pro mode and auto mode. So if for whatever reason you want to go back to the auto mode because you like that better, or for certain situations, you can simply just tap there and then go to auto mode, but we don't want to do that. We'll stay here. Then we have a couple of different settings or setups that we can go into. We have our photo setup. So in here we have a variety of different settings that we can choose. We have our image format, and if we tap on there, we can choose the output quality of the photos captured with UWACAM. Now we have our Max RAW, we have our HEIC Max, HEIC, JPEG Max and JPEG. I personally like JPEG Max the best. I'm not really using RAW too much. I'm actually not much of a photo guy at all, so I don't really take a lot of photos underwater, and if I do take photos, I don't want them to be in RAW and having to go and do some editing with them. It's just not really my thing, so I like to keep it on JPEG Max. And I like JPEG because the HEIC codec sometimes on certain software is not really accepting it, so you then have to go and convert it into a JPEG first before you can use it somewhere. So I prefer to just use JPEG. It's just it's accessible or accepted pretty much everywhere, and you can use it easily across different platforms. So that's my reason for choosing that, and I would go with JPEG Max rather than JPEG, just giving you a little more extra quality of your footage there. Then we have bracket enabling, so you can basically take several photos at different exposure levels, and then the camera, the software will blend them together into one photo, and that can be useful if you want to do you know, high contrast situations. You want to capture those. That can actually be quite useful there. Usually it requires you to be very still, so on land I would actually recommend using a tripod. Underwater you can do that same obviously as well, but it's a little more complicated. I never really use that. As I said, I'm not a photography guy, so I keep that off. You have your bracketing range, so you can basically say usually there's going to be 3 photos taken, one overexposed, one properly exposed and one underexposed, and then it's combining those 3 photos into like the final photo. Now here you can basically tell the software how much over and under it should expose the two photos it takes on either side. So either 2.5 stops, over and under, whatever you want to do. Again, I'm not an expert with photography, and so I'm probably the wrong person to ask a suggestion here, what you should set. Then we have a function here, photo stops video. Now, you know that in certain modes you can, while you're taking a video, you can take a photo at the same time. And here you basically tell the system whether it should stop video recording when you take a photo, or whether it should keep recording on. You can enable or disable this. It's enabled by default, and I've never really changed it because, again, I don't really use that function at all. The next one is our self timer, and here pretty self-explanatory. We can change settings for the self timer. We can adjust how the blinking light works, whether it's a countdown or just simply before the capture. We have two different settings that we can change to whatever we want. If 7 seconds is not an ideal self timer for you, you can change that. The same with the 30-second one. You have your interval. If you want to do more than just one capture, you can do just one self time capture, or you can do several, and then you can also define the interval in which it will take these captures. Going out here again, and we go into the advanced settings. We have here the raw thumbnail, and you can define whether that is shown in as a small thumbnail or as full resolution. That's in playback mode. We have our raw bits, and you can define here how many bits the raw photos should be taken with. This obviously depends on the capability of your camera. You cannot obviously record in 16-bit if your camera only does 10-bit. So there's some maximum set there by default. Then we have the compression, and the compression rate you can define here. As I said, I just keep this at default because I'm not really using the photography section too much. You have the burst priority, whether you want to have that on quality or speed. And then you have your interval if you want to do burst shooting, in what interval those bursts will happen. If we go back out here and we'll go into the, for me, much more interesting section, that's our video setup. That's also the part that I can talk a little more about actually. So we go into the format, and here you have different formats that you can choose. We have our ProRes 422HQ, ProRes 422, ProRes 422LT, the ProRes 422 Proxy, we have HEVC, and we have H.264. Now, I usually like to use HEVC for the video recording, simply because it's a codec that works quite well on a variety of different systems, and it compresses your final files a little more than the H.264. So the files are a little smaller. I prefer that. I usually don't really use ProRes unless I have, you know, a very specific project or sequence that I'm filming that I want to get the best possible quality. Then maybe, but I think that it's just, the file sizes are just too big for me, so I don't really like recording ProRes on the phone. Then we have our video resolution, straightforward, 720p, 1080p, or 4K. Obviously, that's all gonna be depending on the iPhone or the phone that you're using with UWACAM. Then we have our frame rates. Again, this is a reflection of what your phone can do, and you can choose these frame rates here. And then we have advanced settings, and this is where it's becoming even more interesting. Now we have the color space and LUT tab. Here we can define in what color space our captures will be recorded. The normal one is your Rec. 709, and this is also what most people will edit their footage in. You can also do P3D65, you can do Rec. 2020, you can do Apple log, which is really cool. So if you do want to record your footage in a log format, you have that available here. And then you have your LUT setup. Remember, previously we talked about activating the LUT preview on the screen. You can do that through the quick access, and here you can actually select the LUTs and how they're displayed. So we have our LUT selection. There is a variety of different LUTs already preloaded in UWACAM, so you can choose any of these. If you choose the Apple log, then I recommend you go with the Apple log to Rec. 709 conversion LUT. That's the original standard official Apple conversion LUT for that codec, and it's going to give you a good representation of what your image looks like or will look like once it's gone through post-production. You can then define whether the LUT should be on or off. That's the same setting that you can do in the quick access menu, and you can also here additionally you can define whether the LUT should be recorded straight onto your file or not. I recommend not to do this, because then you can just do it in post-production. You can keep it on as a preview so you see what the final result is going to look like, but I wouldn't record the LUT onto or bake it into the image, because then you can't undo this anymore in post-production. It's baked in that look. But if you keep it off, you can then just apply the LUT in post-production and you have just more flexibility that way. Right, so that's our color space and LUTs. We have our stabilization, different options there, off, standard or cinematic. I like standard the best. I don't think cinematic is normally necessary. We have our quality, low, medium, high or max. Personally, I always go for max quality. I think it pays off to have that, and it's not really that much more in storage space. You have your color blending speed. Now, this has to do with the UVA color, and basically UVA color is a dynamic color correction. So if something in the image changes, UVA color will change its mathematical form, not the formula, but its mathematical output, and will deliver or change the image. And here you can adjust the speed in which it will change from one sort of output to another one if it detects a change is needed. And this is in seconds, so you can say, like, for example, 1 second. If you want to have it as a smoother transition, you can go up and say I want to have it as a 5-second transition, so it just moves slower from having like a color correction applied to changing to another color correction if it detects an environment that asks for that change. And then we have our time code, and here you can change how you want that time code to be recorded, or what kind of time code you want to have recorded. I never ever use time code, so I just keep that off. I don't really need that. Right, and that's our advanced section in here. By the way, the same applies here with the eye icon as in any other submenu. If you're not sure what all these submenus and these features do, you can just press on that, and then you'll get to a little help that will give you a basic sort of information on what all of these features do and how you can use them. So let's get out of the video setup and we'll go into the audio setup, something that I barely ever use, simply because I don't really use too much audio on underwater captures. You have your audio recording either on or off. You can also have it off so you don't record anything, but I do like having that sort of ambient audio on there. Then the audio levels, you can determine whether they should be shown on the main screen or not. Remember, before we had them on the right hand side. If we have them off, they're not visible on that right hand side anymore. Then the audio peaks, also whether you want to have them shown or not. If you have this off, the audio levels off, that doesn't really matter. Then you have your audio source. I don't know if you knew this, but there's several microphones around on your iPhones, and you can basically define here which microphone should be used to capture the audio. Again, underwater, I don't think that's a big thing, but they've included it in the app anyways. You have some polar patterns that you can define, and you have the audio format. That might make sense to change something here if you want to, but again, audio is so marginally important to me when I shoot underwater that I just keep it on the default standard setting. Next one is the display section, and this is interesting because it gives us the option to show a variety of different things on the screen. Now we can show our histogram, and here we have the choice between the luminance, RGB, red, green and blue. We can show both, and then we can go into the advanced sections here. In here we can define the size of the how it's shown on the screen, the position. We can also have a peak hold, which basically kind of shows you or keeps the peak visible for a little longer, something I don't really need, I keep that off. Then we have a clipping indicator, which I find interesting and I keep that on. We have a tap to move, so by just tapping on it, you can move it around. And we also have the option to keep the histogram on when the magnifier is activated. Not really something that I need, so I keep that off. But let's have a quick look at these different functions. So we'll use both and I'll show you what this looks like. If we have both on, I'll obviously have the LUT on now, so we need to take the LUT off first. This is better. And now you can see on the left hand side that we have our histogram there. Now I think we have the tap, move by tap enabled. So if I tap on here we go. It's gonna move to different positions. And this can be useful if sometimes it blocks a specific part of your image that is important in that specific moment. You can just by tapping move that around. If we go back in here, the histogram, and go to advanced, and we have our sizes. So we have tiny, small, medium, large. I like it actually to be rather large so I can see it properly. And then, well, that's basically it with all these settings. The rest is pretty self-explaining. We'll go out there and we'll go to overlays. And here you have a whole lot of different things that you can overlay on your image. You have your rules of third that you can overlay. I like to have that activated at all times. You have your level, which can be useful. So you get like a level indicator, whether or not you're holding your camera leveled. The center dot, you have your center cross, which doesn't really make much sense if you have a center dot. In my opinion, you can activate your compass there, and then you go into the more part here. You have a safe area, so you can define what your safe area is. Now this is used as a reference, so you know which parts, how to frame your image, so that if you want to add extra stabilization, for example, in post-production, and it's going to crop in a little bit on your image, that you're still in the safe area section there. I don't really use that, to be honest. You have your aspect ratio, which you can change to a variety of different things. You can even go in here and have some more there. I just have it to the 16:9 really. That's like the standard. Then you have your overlay rotation, basically meaning that if you rotate your phone, that the overlay is gonna be rotating with it and it's gonna stay with it. We have an advanced section here with the aspect ratio, where you can define the color, the opacity, the width of each of these. I see different colors. Then we have the opacity, you can change that. We have the width, you can change that. So there's a lot of features and a lot of sort of customization that you can put into there. We have, did I go too fast? Oh, that's the compass. This is where you can adjust all these things with your compass, as we said previously. Let's say you don't like the red compass, you can, I don't know, you can make it whatever, magenta, and you can make the width more and just change it to whatever you like so that it is appealing to you. The same goes here with your rule of thirds, the level and so on. It's exactly the same thing. You can just adjust and customize all of these in whichever way you want, and they will work the same. So that's our overlays. Then we have our assist functions. Here we have our focus assist. That's the same that we can activate by in the quick access menu. We have our focus threshold. That's also what we can adjust there, so that how intense that that focus assist, that focus peaking is. The color can be adjusted here, so we can just change it to whatever, I'll do white, whatever. Then we have our zebra, we can turn it on and off here. The zebra threshold, as we said it before, to the 70 or the 100%. We can go down to 80% again, save that. Zebra color, you can change that as well if you don't want to have it white. Again, very similar. You can change all these assist functions there, or the appearance of these assist functions. Then the next one is our user interface. And our user interface has a couple of interesting things. First of all, our info bar, we can have that small, as they call it, regular, or large. I prefer to have it large. Now I'll show you what the difference is. This is large, as you can see it now down on the bottom. And if we want to have that small display interface, if we want to have that regular, and we go back, it's much smaller now. It's less obvious, maybe less disturbing. I personally like it to be a little bigger, so I'm gonna be going, where is it, interface and info bar, to the large again. Then we have our controls in the landscape mode, and here you can define where you want to have the buttons, whether they should be on top or on the bottom, which button should be left and right, the photo and the video recording buttons. Then you have the same for your portrait mode. You can completely customize your quick access menu. So you have all these functions that are available in the quick access, and you can customize that in whichever way you want. You can change the position of each of these functions by just using the little arrows here going up and down. If you don't need something, like for example the rotation lock, you can get it out of the way so it's not there anymore. Or for example, I don't ever use the camera blending, get rid of that, so we save some space on that quick access menu. It's not overcrowded there, and if for whatever reason in the future you want to get them back, just add them back onto the screen there. Keep in mind that some of the functions in general will not be available if camera blending is turned on. So they will be grayed out, they will not be available, and you might just as well, if camera blending is on, get rid of them from the quick access menu if you want to. Alright, moving on to the next one, which is our advanced settings number 1 here in the user interface. So tapping on that will open up the settings. We have the camera buttons, and this is your lens buttons, your 1x lens, your 2x lens, your 5x lens, your 0.05 lens. You can define whether that should be on the screen, or if you want to keep the screen clean, you can also have it just in quick access. Now if you have it in quick access, then the next section defines whether the quick access will close once you select a camera or not. I like to have it on the screen anyway, so I keep it on the screen, and then the second one doesn't really change anything. Then you have your mode button. That's the 2 arrows which change in between, which let you change in between photo and video. Whether or not you want to have that displayed on the screen, you can also have that turned off, and then you can just press the actual button, the camera button or the video button or the photo button, and it will change mode by pressing either one of these buttons. You can define whether you want to have UWA color, the UWA color button on the screen or not. Now if you want to use UWA color, while in the water and live underwater, then obviously it makes sense to have that button activated. If you're only ever going to use it in post-production, then you can keep that off, because then you don't really need that button on there. I personally like to have it on anyways, just in case I want to do a quick check and see how UWA color would look like when I have it activated. Usually I don't activate it underwater, because I like to have the base file without UWA color burned into the file available, and then apply UWA color in post-production when so that it saves both files. So I have the base file uncorrected, and then I also have the corrected file using UWA color. We talked a little more about that in detail and how to achieve that in the auto tutorial. So if you haven't seen that, that's where you can check on that. Then we have the playback button. Do you want to have that on or off on the main screen? I like to have that on so I can quickly access the captures and have a quick look at them. And then here, this last function there, it basically defines whether the zoom that you can apply or that you can have, the smooth zooming that you can activate in quick access, whether it should go through the different lenses or not. If you have that disabled, it will only just go within the limitation of the selected lens. If you have that activated, enabled, it will cycle, or it will go through the different lenses and change the lenses as you zoom either in or out. And the last one is our advanced number 2 section, the hardware button. These are actually the buttons on the phone itself, the actual buttons that you can press on the phone, like for example your volume button. And certain apps will actually have a function that gets activated or triggered by pressing that volume button. For example, the Bluetooth shutter, Divevolk's Bluetooth shutter, actually uses the volume button signal to start recording and stop recording or take a photo. So if you use the Bluetooth shutter, it is important to have that hardware button enabled, otherwise it won't work with UWACAM. So just for you to know. Then we have a haptic feedback that can be activated. Don't really need that, so I keep that off. We have faded buttons. You can have your buttons fade if you want to. You can define the opacity and also the duration it takes for the fade to happen. Again, something that we've discussed in the auto mode tutorial a little more in detail. The hide disabled settings function has to do with the camera blending. And if you have camera blending enabled, certain functions will not be available. And you can either keep these functions or the icons for these functions visible but grayed out so you can't use them, or you can just have them disabled and have them disappear, so you don't really see these functions at all. Whatever is more convenient to you, as since I barely ever use the camera blending, that's not really something that is of a concern to me. Then you have the recording indicator, that frame that goes around your image when you start recording. You can have that either as a steady red frame or flashing or off. I have it steady normally, but let's see what it looks like if we have it flashing. So we start recording and now you see that that frame is flashing. The other option would obviously be to have it steady. Whatever is best for you. Doesn't really make much of a difference in my opinion. So we were in display and user interface advanced 2, and then you can also define the width of the recording frame. You can make it wider or narrower to your likings. Moving on to the next one, that's our warnings, and here this is pretty straightforward. We have a battery warning that we can enable, and we have a storage warning that we can enable. With storage, we can say, we can kind of define different thresholds. We have a limited storage, which is 20% by default, but we can change that. We have a low storage, 4%, we can change that too, and then we can turn it on and off here. And with battery, we can just turn that on or off. And we have the sleep function here, where we can say we want to have the camera going to sleep, or we want to have the entire app going to sleep. I prefer just the camera, not the entire app. And then we can also define the camera sleeping time, so how long it takes if we don't do anything on the camera on UWACAM before the camera goes into sleep. The default setting here is 120 seconds. I haven't changed that. I think that's a pretty decent number and setting there. So going out of the display and going into the advanced section, here we have our camera blending that we can turn on or off. We have our white balance lock. I would always have that on. Basically means that your white balance is not gonna change anymore once you start recording. So you're not gonna get those weird white balance shifts that are quite common with iPhones. We have a function here where we can define if the video should resume. And this is if we are recording a video, we take a photo, the video stops, and then after the photo has been taken, should the video recording resume again or not? That's what we're defining with this button and this function there. Should we stop recording if frames drop, if your system cannot keep up and it drops frames, should the recording stop or should you keep recording? And you can also activate your magnifier here. This is something that we talked about in the auto tutorial a little more in detail. You can look it up there if that's of interest to you. Going out of that advanced section, which finishes our camera setting or camera menu, we'll go to the playback menu. This is something that is not going to be as complicated and as big as the other one. We talked about this before already. So this is your playback mode where you can do all these different things in here. I'm not really going to go too much into detail here again, but we have the playback settings. And here you can actually define whether once you enter playback you want to go into the last capture or you want to go into the list, depending on what you prefer. You have your video settings. You can keep audio off or on, whatever you want. It doesn't really matter for me, I have it off. And you can define whether you want to have the time code shown or not. I don't really need that really. Then we have the playback zoom. This basically tells you or gives you the option to zoom into your image while playing it back. That's actually quite a useful feature, I find, to see whether you nailed focus and stuff. You can also define whether you want to have a small thumbnail on there, and the default zoom default zoom setting. Now if we have that enabled, if I show you what this looks like, if we go here into the playback mode, just gonna find a video. So we have a video here. We start playing that back, and if we just tap anywhere on the video, it's gonna zoom in. If we tap on the little thumbnail, it's gonna zoom out again, and we can also just move it around. So this is a really easy way. While the recording is still going, or the playback is still going, I can check how much in focus my image is, how certain parts of the image are, and I really like that. So I like having that activated. Going back into our playback, here we were. So we had the playback zoom. Now we have the delete button. You can decide if you want to have that on or off. Some people might not want to have that on to not press it accidentally. It doesn't bother me, I keep that on. The playback button, you can define whether you want to have that on the main recording screen or not. And then you have your sharing settings where you can define whether you want to have that button there at all or not. And you can also define if you want to be asked about cropping photos to a certain ratio every time, if you want to be asked every time, if you want to have them cropped always or never. And I'll show you what this means. If we select a photo here, let's see, we need a photo. This is photo. So if we go and we want to share it, and now it asks us if we want to crop that to a 16:9 ratio. I can't adjust the ratio here, and I can't sort of change the portion of the image, but I can say yes, crop, or don't crop, and then I can share it to wherever I want. This can be useful if you're sharing it to social media platforms that have a specific ratio requirement, and you can make sure that you get that here. With that 16:9 or 9:16, depending on whether you're using landscape or vertical mode. Right, let's go back in here. That's us. The sharing was the last one here. So we'll go out of the playback mode and we'll go into the settings mode. Here in our settings mode, we have the first one, which is our current settings. So this is actually a very useful overview, because it tells you exactly what settings you have set in the current state your UWACAM app is set up. You can cycle through all these and check everything, and it's quite it gives you a lot of information, and most of it is probably not going to be very not very useful for you, but you can get a lot of information from that function. And I definitely recommend checking that from time to time and seeing what the different settings are that you have set to. You can save your presets. So you'll see here I have 3 different presets that I've set. I will actually make a separate video of another time soon in the future, explaining my presets and sharing the exact settings on my presets. But I've got like a macro setting, a wide angle setting, and a slow motion preset, and you have up to 6 presets that you can define that way, and you can also access these presets pretty easily. We have a subscription information here telling you how much longer your subscription is valid for. I'm on a beta subscription that's running for another 30 days, so that's what it's telling me here. We have metadata that you can basically define what should be written in the metadata information of your files. And then the storage. Now this is different, the video storage, photo storage, and the storage warning, which it can basically tell you we can have that on or off, and it'll tell us whether or not we have enough storage, or when the storage gets to a point where it's you know, it gets critical. Video storage, we can define whether we want that in-app. We can define whether we want that in the photos section of our phone. We can define if we want to have it in the photo section. We can also have it separately combined in a individual, in a separate album, the UWACAM album that puts all your UWACAM videos in that one place. You can also have an album per day. This can be useful if you're on a diving vacation and you just want to make sure that all your captures, all your videos from one day are in the same folder, so you get a bit of a structure, and you can import these folders then onto your computer. You can also have them in files if you want to do that, and then you can select the folder here, either on your phone, or you can go on here and you can say I want to have it on my iCloud. It's different ways how you can save this. You can make a new folder here, define that, and say this is my UWACAM folder, and then I put all my stuff in there. Let's go back here and back there and cancel this. I usually like to have them in-app. To be quite honest, I think that's the easiest way, and then after each of the dives, or at the end of the day better, I go through all of the captures from that day and I select the ones that I want, I export them, and I'll bring them onto my computer, so I don't have them on my phone separately anymore. So they're all just in UWACAM, and then when I've exported them, I can then delete them from UWACAM. You can also define the naming of the videos. You can either do a timestamp, or you can do like an index, a number, whatever is more convenient to you. And that's the video. For the photo, it's exactly the same. You can define the same things there as for the videos, which is also quite convenient, because you can have, if you want to do it in folders, you can have the videos in one folder, the photos in another folder. So there's a ton of different options and ways how you can manage your storage here. Then we have the advanced section, and here we have our visualizer AI. We talked about this in our auto tutorial a little more in detail, so if you want to get more information on the visualizer, go and check that out, please. You can turn it on or off here. You can skip confirmation. It's always going to ask you whether you're aware that you're going to be using data, mobile data, to go and visualize, analyze a capture or a frame to get you the information for the creature that you captured. And obviously that can incur costs, especially if you're somewhere abroad and you don't have a data plan. It can get quite expensive, even though they're actually trying to use as little data as possible, but still, data roaming can be an expensive thing. So you can define here whether you want to be warned every time before an analysis, a frame gets analyzed or not. I don't really need that. And then you have the language that you can set here, different languages available for the visualizer information. The location, you can define whether you want to have that off, satellite, or you can also do a manual location, and then you can place it wherever you want. It's obviously not working underwater, but it's gonna take the last known location and save that to your file if you keep that activated. And then you can also reset settings. You can do a reset all the current settings, which does not clear all your presets. or you can do reset all, which will also clear all your presets from the menus. So that's our settings submenu. Going into the presets menu, and this is where you can access all the different presets that you've set up. This is an easy way of, switching from, I'm now in macro mode, because so I will go and recall the macro settings. So I'm in macro mode now, and now suddenly I go, okay, let's go into my wide angle mode, because I've seen something wide angle-ish that I want to film. Bam, I go into my wide angle mode and I can start filming there. So, as I said before, I will be making another video sometime soon explaining these settings that I have for my 3 different presets: macro, wide angle, and slow motion. And if you're interested in that, make sure that you have subscribed to the channel so you're not missing out on that video that will come up soon. And then the last one here is our information menu, our question mark. Here you get news, you get a little intro to UWACAM, you get information about the controls, you get some shooting video tips, some taking photo tips, and some general tips and tricks for diving with a camera and all that sort of stuff. Definitely makes sense to go and read through them at a time of your convenience, and get yourself familiar with UWACAM in that way, and how you can make sure to get the most out of your smartphone in combination with the UWACAM app underwater. And this brings us to the end of part 2 of this complete UWACAM tutorial, looking specifically at the Pro mode with its numerous Pro level features. I hope you found this run through useful and it helps you get the most out of using UWACAM on your next dive adventure. A piece of advice: it is highly recommended to invest some time into getting to know UWACAM and setting things up before you actually go on a dive, the same as you would with any DSLR camera that you use for the very first time. That way you're already familiar with settings and handling and don't waste valuable air and time while you're at depth. And you can use UWACAM to its full potential. I also really recommend reading the quick reference manual. Link will be down in the description. It doesn't just explain the functions, it also contains valuable tips and hints on how to get the most out of UWACAM. And make sure to watch the first part of this tutorial series talking about the general use of the app and auto mode as well, if you haven't yet. You'll find a link to it in the video description below. Should there be any questions regarding the Pro mode, please feel free to either leave them down in the comment section or reach out to the UWACAM team directly at support@uwacam.com. You can also always check the ever-growing knowledge base, which already has close to 70 articles at the time of recording this tutorial. All of these are great resources of information on all the features and functions of UWACAM and how to use them best. If you want to learn more about the amazing UVA color processing and see some more examples of the technology in use, check out this video over here next. Thanks for watching, guys. Keep capturing your awesome underwater adventures, and I will see you in the next video.